Hi there, I'm Luke, welcome back to PhotoBuy, and today we have our hands on the Honor 20, which we're going to put it through its paces here in this lovely sunny day at a street market. So let's get into it. So the Honor 20 is the entry-level phone for the Honor 20 series. However, this is only the Pro above it. But when you're looking at this model here, which we have covered off in our launch piece on our website, so you can have a look at that. But off the bat, you're looking at 128 gigabytes of memory, 6 gigabytes of RAM. You then got a 16 megapixel wide camera, a 48 megapixel main camera, 2 megapixel macro, and a 2 megapixel depth camera as well. So quite a few cameras, so you can do quite a few things. So without further ado, let's go through the tests. So getting into the test, we start off with super macro. Now with this, it's only a 2 megapixel camera, so do bear that in mind. And you've got to get really close to your subject, so you just hope it doesn't move. And in terms of the actual photo itself, it's usable. You wouldn't really get a print out of it, but you could certainly use it on social media. This camera is seen more as something you can just have fun with, rather than something to actually take seriously. But it's a nice thing to add, and we can definitely see Honor working on it in the future. But the next feature to really have a look at is the AI Ultra Clarity. Now this is designed to give you the highest clarity and highest resolution image possible. And it uses a similar feature to what you see when you're using night mode, where you got to hold the camera for about 5 seconds and it like stacks the photos, so it'll basically run through the depth spectrum, brackets the images, and then gives you a perfectly high resolution image. We believe the reason they do this is so that it takes out grain in the shadows, and it also reduces the peaking in highlights, so that way you get a lovely crisp high clarity photo without the look of the blown out highlights and then the really grainy foreground and shadows. But some of the conveniences of using a phone, they're great for street photography. People just think you're a tourist. Tapping on screens, very quick to get exposures as well. And if you've got a moving subject like this car, you want a phone that's snappy and just going to get the pictures that you want, rather than you having to try and tap before the subject starts moving. Now in this test with the close, I went back into AI Ultra Clarity because I wanted to see how movement would affect the photos, because obviously you're taking it over a 5-second timer, and I wanted to see if the stacking would ruin the images, and it didn't from what I could tell. But if you're using it on a person who's moving, or maybe a pet that moves a lot, you probably will see some issues, so just bear that in mind when you do plan on using AI Ultra Clarity. Now in the next step, I went into the 48 megapixels, and when I did that, you lose it on your zooms. So with this, you get a 2x zoom on the camera, and you didn't have that when you're shooting at 48 megapixels, so you have to go back into settings, you're then going to go back down to 12 megapixels, and then you get your zooms back. And in this next test, I just wanted to see how well it held the photo together, so looking at the highlights, looking at the foreground for the shadows, and it held the skies very well. You didn't really see much highlighting except in the clouds, and the foreground was very well lit. And with that being said, you didn't see much grain in the foreground either, especially in the shadows. Now the next one was a tad low light. Obviously it was quite a bright day, so I had to find some shelter. I used this mirror as a subject, and you can see how well the shadows are maintained and held in the image itself. One of the features I really liked about the Honor was how quick you could focus and take a picture. It was almost instantaneous. There was no hunting involved. There was no issues with it being slightly out of focus or blurry. Given it was a bright day, you expect some fast exposures, and the Honor 20 delivered, which was fantastic, because sometimes you get a photo test and they can be a tad slow when you're using them. So next up, we wanted to test out the 10x zoom, which is another great little feature in the Honor 20, and it really takes advantage of the 48 megapixel zoom. However, when you digitally crop into a sensor, you're dropping it down to about a 2 to 4 megapixel photo, and as you can see in the picture itself, it's not exactly the sharpest. Well, it's not sharp. So if you are looking to use it, it's probably best for social media at best. You wouldn't want to use it and get something printed from it. Now next up, we tested out the 1x the wide angle, just so you could see what it could do. And as you can see with the wide angle, you can get a lot more in. In terms of color balance, they're pretty similar. They're quite well done sensors. It is a tad darker in the shadows, but you know, it's not a big deal. That can always be tweaked in post. But one of the lovely features we liked about wide angle is that it just gives you an opportunity to get more in your frame, especially if it's a big subject. It's a fantastic way of getting it all in without having to do a panoramic shot. So we hope that's helped you pick out your next camera phone being the Honor 20. If you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, my name's Luke, this is PhotoBite, and we'll see you next time.